NTV.
A very good morning. Welcome to this edition of Morning at NTV. It's the big story. And the big story is still a conversation around the happenings in the August House where, well, looks like 102B may come to see the light of day by Christmas. Questions abound whether it will be passed without much ado or what is happening behind the headlines with regard to the machinations being carried out allegedly by one side over the other, but also interestingly how it will play out on the grand scheme of things going forward, considering the fact that a new spanner has been thrown in the works, not in the sense of spoiling the mix, but certainly improving the mix, so to say. Some have said they need to have an extra 2 years for some members of parliament, for all members of parliament and elected officials. Could be yet another of the softening tactics being carried out by the proponents of expanding 102 to allow for, more ground for that proposition to see the light of day. Today I have an exceptionally imbalanced panel. It is only I and Sebalu, who is a member of the NRM. He is not a member of parliament. He was a legislator at the East African Parliament and also in our national parliament in the years gone by. He is now into the private sector. He was telling me earlier on in the program that he is doing very well in farming and doing other businesses, but still very interested and keen on matters of politics. But you also work at the NRM Secretariat when you are not very busy, not so?
Yeah, I'm available to serve my party, and I'm also a member of the National Disciplinary Committee of NRM. So in terms of politics, I'm still engaged, especially with the work of my party, and I'm always available to serve and promote and champion the ideals for which we stand as National Resistance Movement Party.
I didn't greet you. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. And how are you doing?
Now you need
good as usual. You
never looked worse.
You keep those levels, and I'm always impressed about it.
Well, I am glad I'm following your footsteps. I learned from the best. But Sebalu, there are a number of allegations that I would love you to lend credence to. Is it true that the NRM is bribing members of parliament to pass this 102? At first we heard it was 700 million, then we were told it was a billion shillings. Now it has come down to a paltry 40 million, complete with an addition of 2 years on their tenure in parliament. True or false?
False, and very false. And I don't think you are surprised by such allegations.
No, I am surprised.
We are in competition, and we are competing with people who are now running very desperate. And they need to justify their loss. They've always done so. They never lose out of their weaknesses, and they never own up in terms of their weaknesses. They will always want to explain their defeat on this and that other reason. The NRM is a party that enjoys absolute majority, not even just majority, but absolute majority. And the position we are talking about is an agreed position by the NRM, save for a few deviants, but it is largely a position that is owned and championed by the entire caucus. It went through the caucus. Some didn't agree with it, but the major majority of the members did agree. It has gone through the different levels of the party hierarchy, the National Executive Committee and the Central Executive Committee of the party. So it is the position of the party, and all members are under obligation to support it, given that it is a position of the party. So it would be unthinkable to imagine that with such an absolute majority, you have to, again, bribe your majority in order to pass a position and a decision they themselves have initiated, owned, and championed. But definitely, the opposition will have to create a reason to explain their overwhelming defeat when this matter comes to vote.
No one doubts that you have the overwhelming majority. The bravado with which you speak, believing in your tyranny of numbers, to a large extent also sparks a high level of dishonesty. Why do I say you are dishonest, Honorable Sebalu? What is the glue that holds that majority together? Isn't it money? Do you want them at that position you have arrived at was arrived because...
The glue is ideology.
Really?
Yes.
Is there something called ideology in that party?
There is
I thought the ideology we know is this
because
one.
you see, there is something I want us to appreciate, because we need to get down to the crux of the matter. What this bill is all about, despite the fact that people have tended to use it otherwise, is for it to create an opportunity for all available leaders with exceptional skills.
Above 75 or below, but not
Or
below 20.
Because those are there, exceptional skills, above or below, so that at any one time we can call them to serve if the Ugandans feel that these people can serve. And I can give you an example where this kind of arrangement can be very useful. You are a football fan. We got out of the World Cup. The team that beat us, that is Egypt, the goalkeeper was 44 years. He is 44 years.
The oldest goalkeeper.
The oldest, but he was able to deliver his team to the World Cup because of exceptional skills. Now, within their football arrangements, they saw that coming and created an enabling environment for such exceptionally talented people to be available to serve their nation.
Despite
but he
age.
did much better than goalkeepers of 20 of anything. So those people are always there. I can give you an example. When our senior leader, the late Samson Chiseka, was vice president, surely I still rank him very high among those that have performed well as vice presidents. But he was over 80. He would go out, address an international conference, and everyone is like, that old man has spoken. So you have such people. And all countries that have developed have always created openings for such exceptionally talented and gifted people to be available to serve as and when people want them. And those people can be on the lower end of the age. They can also be on the higher side of it. So what we are simply saying, open it up and allow such people, wherever they are. If it is a DP and it has such a person, bring them to be fronted.
My conversation with you is not so much about the rationale or the reason as to why you support the removal of 102B. I think what we now are discussing at the moment are the machinations that are being alleged to be taking place within your party, where there is a bit of arm twisting, carrot dangling.
I'm bringing that and to show you that the position we've taken is rational and is justified. So all progressive members of our party are appreciative of the import
so if
of
you
this.
Have your ideology,
so you don't need money to convince me about a very rational position.
Fair enough.
That would be rational to imagine that I would need money, even like, for instance, coming to this radio station.
It's a TV station.
Sorry, and my apologies. Coming to this very prestigious TV station. You can't say, Mike will give you 100,000, come and appear. To me, it is a calling. And it is a privilege, actually, to be invited to come here. So even for a member of parliament belonging to a party as popular as NRM, and you generate an idea, to champion that and serve that is an honor bestowed upon you. So it would be too much of undermining the integrity of our members to imagine that they can only do so upon motivation of monetary rewards. That is definitely a strategy to kind of create, to discredit the process. And when finally members are defeated, they justify the defeat on such baseless, unfounded, and unfortunate allegations.
We are not reinventing the wheel, Honorable Sebano. This has happened before. In 1995, 2005, when was it when you lifted the term limits out of the Constitution? It was not alleged, but it was true. And you members capitulated to the fact that you had each been given a bribe of 5 million shillings. So, what is this ideological clarity you're talking about?
I really want to... That is a perception which has held on, but it is a serious misconception.
Really?
Because even then, that 5 million was facilitation for members to go and consult their constituents. And learning from that mistake, because it was given to one side, this time around, that's why the arrangement has been made that it is Parliament to do that, so that it is not party anymore. That was not a bribe. That was facilitation, and members actually went and consulted their constituents. But a perception was created to the effect that it had been a bribe. It wasn't. But people still believe it. Definitely it wasn't. That's why this time round, matters of facilitating MPs to go were done in a manner that is uniform by Parliament, learning, picking a good lesson from the misnomer that was created by the way that was handled.
The Honorable Sebaru, you would spin anything to really fit your description, but I don't want to be inclined to believe that 5 million shillings was not what it was, a bribe.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Today we are told that you have issued a moratorium on all your members of parliament not to leave the city, or even those who are out of the country and out of the city to return immediately. Why? Because there is a looming fear on your end that you may not get the required 2/3 majority to pass that bill.
And is there anything wrong with that, where you call upon your people to come and do the work that they were sent to do?
When you are speaking with the bravado of numbers, we have the numbers.
But the numbers must be in the house. You can't talk of numbers when they are not in the house. As an organized party, you must marshal all your numbers because you have the numbers. But the numbers are meaningless if they are out of the house. The numbers only make sense when they are in the house. And as an organized party, you simply say there is a job to do, and this is the reason that you were elected. Make yourself available to do the work that you are elected to do. I think that that is simply an organizational detail for which actually we should be credited, that we get our members actually to come and do the work for which they were elected to do. That is accountability, and that is transparency in the method of work that we do apply.
The Honorable Sebaru, of course, talk is rife, and I want to be inclined to believe that this is a very highly divisive subject that we are dealing with. In fact, we've had cases where some of your members of parliament went to their constituencies to consult, were told flatly and outright by their constituents that Toji Kwatako. But they are back here and they intend to go against that position. And there is a fear looming in the public that if you indeed vote against the public or so-called majority whim, this country could find itself in a state of unrest. Doesn't that worry you?
No, I think we need also to appreciate this in context. One, for people to say that my constituency supports this position, it does not mean unanimity, that each and everyone in the constituency will say Jikwateko. Definitely there are situations where people go to their constituencies and an overwhelming majority is saying Jikwateko, but you find a minority but which is very vocal saying Toji Kwatako. And there is this attraction to incline to take the view of the minority. So I really want to appreciate
I think I should have used, just hold on there, remember, so you just make a word of vocal. You know, the other day I described some members of parliament as noisy, and there's been so much noise around my honest opinion about it, for which I'm not apologetic. Maybe I should have used the word vocal. But again, vocal could mean constructive. Noisy means destructive, it might be. But anyway, let's proceed. I want to ask you.
So,
as a former legislator, let me just now get a bit personal here. Do you believe that our August House here and across the political divide has some members of parliament that are exceptionally noisy and perhaps not deserving of the title honorable?
What I can say is that the house, the parliament that you have, reflects the kind of society you have. So chances of having different
so a noisy man like me, there's a high chance that I'll vote someone like me and send him to the house.
Because it is a reflection of the society we have. So having those kind of reflections within a given sample of our population is not something that should worry you. It is something that is expected.
And so you agree with me?
No, not necessarily. I say chances are. I've not pointed out at anyone.
I'm not going to ask you to make mention of names, but be honest with me and stop being...
Yeah, so when I say they are part of society, and in some way or another, they can reflect what our society is like, I think that is a scientific statement.
Which I think is very pregnant with the diplomacy and a bit of being dodgy. You don't speak with candor. You don't speak with brutal honesty, do you?
Well, if I
That
have
you
facts,
will face you will face a spoon and call it a spoon, not a small spade.
With facts I can, but I think I want to give a general statement that we are Ugandans, and Uganda is made up of different characters. So any sample you pick is likely to have a reflection of the different multitudes of characters that make our nation.
If there are lessons to learn, I think I should learn the lesson of not telling the truth. That said, as we conclude, Honorable Sebalu, Mike, here you are faced with a situation, and I asked you, but you seem to want to spin it to the fact that for you, you believe the vast majority agree. But like you said clearly, the minority may be few, vocal, and exceptionally destructive. Are you ready to send this country down the path where we will be emotively tearing each other apart because of a decision that possibly should not have been taken? Never mind that you think it's supported by the majority.
I think then if we take that viewpoint, then we totally abandon democracy. Because if we are to appreciate democracy, how it operates, its ideals, and the methodology of application, then that means that we can only legislate on matters where we have unanimity. And I don't see that situation ever coming. That means that we'll definitely have to give up any lawmaking or any decision making, because chances of having deviant views or deviant positions are very high. But if we are to believe and apply democracy, we should be Democrats, even when democracy is favoring us or when it is not favoring us. Whether you are in the majority, respect the outcome of democracy. Whether you are in the minority too, respect the outcome of democracy, because that is how decision-making are undertaken. They are not out of unanimity. Unanimity is the best case scenario. If you get that, that is well and good. But where you can't get unanimity, you go to voting, and the winner takes it. But maybe what we may put into consideration is always to be mindful of those views of the minority and see how best we can accommodate them when we carry the day with the majority in terms of decision making.
2 extra years on a regular term of an elected office, from 5 years to 7 years. That sounds like music to your ears, or it is one of those things that shouldn't be? Where do you stand?
Yeah, there are 2 things we need to appreciate here, and which I want to appreciate. 2 years, if it is made 7 years beginning with the next term, I think there is no problem, as long as it goes through the procedures and it is accepted. But an extension, what I would have issues with is an extension, where people are elected for a term of 5 years, and then you want to make adjustments to extend that term to 7. I would have serious issues with that. But if it is to put into the Constitution and adjust the term of office to 7 years, beginning with the next term, I think that would also be subjected to the democratic credentials, and whichever way it goes, I would be comfortable with those that carry the day.
You seem often to want to follow the crowd, even when it's also not far-fetched to assume that the crowd can be wrong. Don't you, as Mike Sebalu, sometimes hold back and say, for a moment, these may be few, but they have a point, and the point that is quite believable and firm, perhaps even truer than the whim and euphoria of the majority?
No, I take, by the time I take a position, I do serious personal reflection and analysis of the situation. Maybe more often my analysis and reflections have been in tandem with the majority view, but there are also a few rare occasions where I'm not with the majority. So I really take decisions that are well thought out and based on informed position and analysis.
And as we conclude, let's look at the NRM on what it is. The other day, we had a senior member of your party saying, bickering and infighting will kill that party. Do you agree with the Honorable Kayindo Tafire that is fighting, bickering, and all sorts of terrible malaise of bad governance that are taking place in your party, and yet you claim to have the numbers and you are speaking with bravado as if nothing seems to be going wrong in your backyard.
Yeah, again, I want to explain myself relating to the society that we are. Those aspects also again reflect the kind of society, because even at family level, which is the basic unit, you'll have dynamics that reflect those kind of tendencies. Look at the other parties. I don't think they're not even any better. So if you get a small party having a bit of challenges in terms of those dynamics, then what about a big one, a mass one, where you have even bigger numbers? So chances are that you are likely to have more of those contradictions in the bigger one. But the most important thing is we have mechanisms in place, we have structures, and we have modalities of handling such contradictions. We manage them within the framework of party leadership. But definitely to imagine that you can have a big organization of that magnitude without bickering, without any disagreements or divergent views, would be to negate the whole notion of community dynamics, because these are individuals. At times they have their own interests, and as individuals they have their different characters and personalities. To imagine that they will agree on everything every time, all the time, is to imagine that they are not human.
Mike Sebalu, Honorable, thanks so much for coming to have this conversation with us here on The Big Story Morning at NTV.
Thank you very much, Simon. It is always a pleasure sharing a good morning with a smart, intelligent person like you. Flattery, it makes my day.
Flattery will take you to the moon and back.
I'm speaking from the heart, not the mouth.
For your viewers who take trouble and time to have a follow on these conversations that we have every single morning, you can thank you more. Let's take a breather. When we return, it's more quality programming here on Morning at NTV.
You're watching Morning at NTV.